I want to actually go back and talk specifically about one of the provisions of this bill that I think is particularly troubling for a whole range of reasons, and that is the issue of the coverage of workplace hearing loss. This issue, I think, typifies what is wrong with this bill overall. What the provision in Part 1 provides for is effectively that there will be no cover for hearing loss created in the workplace if it is less than 6%. So there is a 6% threshold being set in place by this government. Now, I think it's reasonable to ask the question, why 6%? Why a 6% threshold? Well, there's actually no reason. There is no good reason. It is an arbitrary figure. It is a figure that the government have chosen for cost containment reasons. That is the justification. Cost containment. Now, these are people, and I'm going to talk about some of these people in this contribution to the speech, because this is going to save us approximately $3 to $4 million a year. That's right, $3 to $4 million a year. And the consequences for the people who no longer have coverage as a result of this arbitrary threshold are substantial. And I want to really find out if the people opposite believe that that saving of $3 to $4 million is worth it for the human cost that that will have. I would just like to note as an aside here that the Minister had quite a good go before it, some of those people in the hearing loss industry, and was talking about, really saying that the presentation on this side of the House was saying we were just listening to people who provided hearing aids, as if somehow they had a vested interest. Well, actually, if the Minister had taken the time to listen to the very, very good submissions that were made on this particular provision, what he would have discovered is that in this area there has been major cooperation by the parties and really substantial efforts made, in fact, to reduce costs. So one of the points that was actually made by one submitter was that we were going to be saving about $3 to $4 million a year here, but in fact the industry itself had saved something like $10 million over 18 months through their combined efforts and a cooperative approach. They were particularly galled by the fact that in the drafting of this bill there'd been no effort made to talk to anybody in the industry. And we received submissions on this particular point from a whole range of people, from people who suffered hearing loss, from academics who studied the trends in workplace hearing loss, from people who provided hearing aids, from audiologists who tested hearing loss, through unions whose members worked in industries where workplace hearing loss was a significant issue, particularly in the past, and I'll come back to that point. And that whole group, 46 submitters on this particular point, 40 submitters opposed, 6 in favour, came up with some very compelling points, I believe, and points that have not been taken into account at all by those across the other side of the House. What does this 6% mean for people? Well, it's trying to say that this is quite a trivial hearing loss. 6%. Less than 6% is quite trivial, really. It's a small hearing loss. Well, that's a bit like saying you're a little bit pregnant, so you're a little bit deaf. It actually has real consequences for real people. And I was very moved by one of the submitters who came to talk to the Select Committee. And this submitter was an older man who had previously been a shearer. And I know those opposite probably don't actually give a toss about real people, but I'm going to tell you about this real person, because this real person worked in our primary industries, very significant to our economy, and he worked as a shearer, and he took the time to come to our Select Committee to talk to us about this issue of hearing loss, because it was very significant to him. And what he said to us was that loss of up to 6% is not trivial, that it means that you can't hear things like birds singing, and you can't hear things like your grandchildren talking. That is not trivial. That is not trivial. Those are significant losses to real people. And he wasn't Mr Chair.
Carol Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So it means real things to real people. They are actually losses, and it's not trivial. And I want to talk about who it affects, who is affected by this issue. And I'm sorry if I'm boring one of the members opposite, but this is actually important. This is something that you are taking away from New Zealanders. So let's make sure, sorry sir, not you personally, this is something the government is taking away from New Zealanders, and that is the right to have treatment for workplace hearing loss if it's less than 6%. So it isn't trivial. Who does it affect? Well, actually, it affects an older demographic. It is mainly older New Zealanders that are in the situation of having this sort of hearing loss, who are coming forward nowadays, who are getting their hearing tested and are then getting fitted with hearing aids. And they are older New Zealanders who have worked in noisy workplaces. So they are older New Zealanders that have, as I said, been shearers or worked in factories or meat plants. They are people who've worked on the wharves. They're people who are not high-income people. They are working-class people, if you like, many older men. And overwhelmingly, we will see significant numbers of Māori and Pacific workers in those kind of industries. And the reason I'm making the point that it's older New Zealanders is because this is one area where we actually have done some things right, where actually workplace hearing loss is not such a significant issue because we can do something about it. It is perfectly preventable, and nowadays in most workplaces we prevent workplace hearing loss. So in fact, one of the academics that came to speak to the Select Committee pointed out that while there has been an increase in the number of claims, that this is not going to be a trend upwards. This is actually like a blip, and that this should start trending down because we've got a whole lot of older New Zealanders who worked in workplaces in times where we didn't have hearing protection in place, where we weren't aware of the issues in the way that we are now. Those people will come through. So I say to the government, you are taking away from not the chair, but ministers like Minister Power and others sitting across the House are taking away from older New Zealanders who've worked in some of our primary industries, working class people who have a chance to actually get treatment, get a hearing aid and have their hearing restored so they can hear their grandchildren speaking and they can hear birds singing, and those are not trivial things. So, as I said, this is preventable, and the implications of what the government is doing here are unfair and they are discriminatory, a point that the Human Rights Commission made specifically to the Select Committee. This provision is discriminatory. But not only is it discriminatory, the consequence of this is one that I don't think has had enough consideration, and that is that this restores the right to sue. So it actually, because people are taken out of coverage, the social contract is broken for those people and the right to sue is restored. Now, that is important. ACC has been a social contract in place all of my working life, and I haven't had the right to sue for workplace injury, but I've had comprehensive cover under accident compensation. That is changing here, and I urge members opposite, as I will be urging members of the public, to think about the implications of going back to a system where one had to sue to get some fairness. It is a serious matter, but I think it might be worth just also reminding those opposite of some more real examples, because I know how interested you were in the sharing example I gave you. Let me tell you about the 45-year-old building construction consultant with 4.7% hearing loss. Now, he has a situation where he cannot hear well with background noise, such as discussions at meetings or on the building site. Or the 56-year-old customs officer with a 4.5% hearing loss who works at the airport in a customs hall which is very noisy. He works with dogs, he has to use an RT. Now, he finds it difficult to hear at work when there's background noise. He attends training seminars but has difficulty hearing. His kids won't repeat what they're saying to him